Hey guys, how you doing? So I just spent an hour or so trying to figure out something. Thank you for Kes Pinak for being patient. I'm gonna do part three, helping traders one on one. And I always had this trouble where I couldn't figure out how to commu- I was talking through the phone on Discord. I couldn't connect them, and we were joking that that's how you know you're getting old when you have tech issues and you don't want to solve it, you can't solve it. So life is interesting. But how you doing, brother? I think
I'm
it's
doing
recording.
good.
I think it's recording. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming on,
awesome.
voice.
Great.
Thank you for reaching out. So today, what we're gonna talk about, guys, we're gonna talk about SNCA. He reached out and he said he took a loss and he wanted to recap on it. So whatever question he has, we're gonna go over it. If I can answer it, I hope it's decent answer. It may be wrong. It may be false, so you have to apologize. I have to apologize just in case I say something that's may not be 100% correct or something that may be wrong. Hope you don't hold it against me. And that's all, man. Like this is ask away. Anything I can help with, anything you need, um, and we'll go over it.
Yeah, awesome. Honestly, my main thing that I was trying to figure out was what do you look for in anticipation for an offering such as NCA, SNCA?
Hmm.
I know that one hurt a lot of people, me as well.
And
I am moderately familiar with SEC filings. I've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of weeks. Um, so I understand like the cash burn rate. I would say more so the money flow, except for the part where, let's see here. Let me pull up my journal real quick.
and also, if you don't mind, while you're asking
Yeah.
the question, if you're cool with it, and if I think you would benefit from this, but it's up entirely up to you. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. I've taken a lot of big ass losses. That's why I'm doing this. If you want to share your execution, we can go over that as well. But whatever questions you have, we'll go with it. So it's up to you. If you're comfortable with it, send it to me on Discord and we'll see. So go ahead. You were
Yeah, yeah.
asking about offering.
Okay. Well, I guess if you just want to help me out with the fundamentals first, like how did you come up with your thesis as far as the fundamental side?
Okay. So the first thing, bro, is that I wasn't expecting an quote unquote offering on this. And I'm gonna make a video on this. SNCA specifically, I know a lot of shorts got hurt, and even I was took a lot of losses on it. And so when I sit back and I reflect, just to put the clear thesis out there, I'm not some magician wizard that knew 100% this thing was coming. I didn't. Like I knew they had overhead. So
Hmm.
when I thought about what happened yesterday, and I do that every single trade, and I was going to make a completely new video, but I want to be blunt with you, and thank you so much for your patience. So if I were to play this trade about 1,000 times, I think I would actually lose money on it. Just so that's clear and upfront. So why did I? So I guess your question would be, how did I know about the offering? And I know it seems like very mystical. I didn't. What my thesis was is that there's a lot of overhead.
Hmm.
Did I understand the question correctly? Like you were trying to understand how I knew the
Yeah.
fall would come on the offering. So the answer is I didn't. And but I had an idea what the objective was. And that could go on for like hours and hours how that happened. But if I had to summarize it, bro, um, from the fundamentals research that there was a lot of warrants. I think it was a really large amount in the morning. I don't recall, like 5 million something. And the tape was it was rejecting. It was acting heavy. So I guess how do we start? Blah, 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 blah. So this is a very difficult and complicated play. Many shorts have would have gotten hurt on it, including myself. and my sizing was too big. This is not something, like I said, if I play 1,000 times, I'll be successful at it. This is one of those hard-headed stuff. And so what they do, bro, and simply put, um, first you have to know what the float is. The float on this was really small. I think like uh, I have a horrible short-term memory. I think it was like 3 million or something. Don't quote me on it, but it's very small compared to the volume it did. And the second thing that I can tell you from experience, oftentimes I am good at being able to read manipulators, what they think, how they think, etc. So what they do is if they're accumulating size, oftentimes they have an agenda. When they're pushing up to certain levels, they they go long, and then they push above the overhead level, which is usually
Yeah.
warrants, preferreds, convertibles, whatever that price is, and it has to be a healthy amount. I think a lot of people think as soon as the warrant level hits, it gets exercised. That's not really how it works. Like it may, but oftentimes it has to be above that because that's the money that they have to cough up. So if the exercise price is at 230, that's the price that they have to pay. So they don't you don't want to do a break even transaction. A lot of times, so they push it higher. So they have their longs, that shares that they need to dump on retail. Oftentimes they build a short position and then they dump the overhead. So why was I shorting this? I was shorting this because, bro, usually there's these are just assumptions that I have made. I can personally tell
Mm.
you from my newbie experience that it is relatively accurate, but um, it's not a factual thing. So what they do is there's a this is like a golden nugget kind of thing is they don't because the float you cannot own more than 10% of the you can own you have to file when it comes to 5%, but oftentimes when
Yeah.
you get to 10% there's a lot of rules, regulation, restrictions, and things like that. So these manipulators, they often, I don't want to go too detailed because I could like talk for days, but sometimes they take preemptive positions, or sometimes the summary is at the end of the day they need to dump their shares if float rotation is happening and if the agenda was to get rid of some sort of share. So a lot of volume gets traded, so they're easily able to dump the shares on retail, etc. Um, so if the agenda, if we're thinking this is being pushed into the after hour, into the end of the day, or this is being pushed to exercise the warrants or to exercise the overhead. Sometimes they continue to day two. But even if they continue to day two, if it's being manipulated, they cannot hold. I shouldn't say they cannot. It would be problematic for them to hold 5%, 10% higher because they have to file with the SEC. And imagine if these
Hmm.
guys are manipulators and they do that often, that would fucking hurt them, right? So I'm giving you one of the golden plays that I utilize. Oftentimes, statistics and individuals and trackers will be like, 3 p.m. it's gonna fail. This it happens, fails. My philosophy in life is I try to always understand. Um, it's still for me. It's still a growing process. I've always been a lot. I'm gonna get a lot of hate because I have a lot of friends that are specialized in statistics and all these things. Um, I try not to focus on statistics. I try to understand, but I think it's a very powerful tool. Like to know where the range is, ATR is. That's really cool, really neat. And there's a million ways to make money. But my understanding why oftentimes if you hear some people on Twitter, some people say, well, between 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., stock tends to take a dump. That's often because of that reason, because they don't want to have to file. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay. So this was my initial thought process. And then we saw the volume, how it was acting, how it was behaving. It was looking heavy. And I knew that risk management is the key, right? So
Right.
I don't know if you've seen any of the other videos. Um, I'm a big fan of Ozark. He's a very nice guy. I've spoken to him on inbox quite a few times. He stopped responding probably because I annoyed the hell out of him. But he does respond, and I think a few times he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm busy." Doesn't treat us. So his philosophy always like try not to add to a loser. And when I was making my trades, um, I would just try to cut it. Like it sucked. Like I think I started shorting when it was the failure. The high was 295, and then I often talk about liquidity event. That's what I call it. And kept failing, and I started shorting that, and I used that high as a risk, and I had to cut it. Usually I cut 8/10, etc. So overall, my objective here was I saw there was a volume profile level, heavy accumulation at 250. So I was shorting at around 4-ish, whatever it was, and my ideal target was 250. And technically, I got lucky that they had reduced the warrant price because they don't always necessarily do that. Okay, is that
Okay.
long-winded question, a long-winded answer? Does if that doesn't answer the question, feel free to ask. This is your time. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess my question was if there was anything in the filings you look for in anticipation of the offering. It sounds like that's not necessarily something that you'd look for the offering, that is. It's more so you're just playing off of knowing that there is a supply and demand imbalance, and then you're just playing with your risk and reward.
No, this name is, if we're talking this name specific,
Hmm.
this is a very complicated name. So my answer was geared towards this. So this is why it's really good that you reiterated. So if your question was, how do I know about an offering play? Those are
Yeah,
different
that
variables.
was the question.
Okay. I apologize because I thought we are talking specific about the sticker. So how do I usually know if an offering is coming? The
Yeah.
biggest key thing, bro, is the cash to burn rate. So if they're really low in cash, but then you also got to do proper due diligence, and of course the company has to be burning cash, and they don't have to have marketable securities, or they don't have to have very liquid assets, and Auspex goes into that, but it's just a low cash, and then also the different formats of offering. So they would have an S3, um, and they have to make sure that it has an effect, or sometimes the effect comes in the same day as offering. S3, S1, and there's also pipe. But the biggest variable would be it's low in cash. And if I can elaborate a bit more on that, just because I don't potentially, because other people will be hearing this, I don't want them to get hurt. In my opinion, I think shorting on the base of offering is a very risky concept, but
Hmm.
it's something that has a lot of gratification. So it's like the action movies where the guy goes pew 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 and he like kills 10 people with one bullet. It's that kind of thing because people see the candle. It's like instant money, all that bullshit. Because if you're anticipating an offering, having done this for a long time, it, of course it could pay off, but it would rip your face off as well. But the problem is that because there's such a big gap up, there's so much excitement, and then there's so much feelings and thoughts like, oh, if I was in here, I would have made 50%. I could have put this much. I would have made this much. All that jazz. So just be super cautious about having conviction on offering plays. Another play, simply put, in my opinion, and I know I'm creating competitors for myself, but is actually the overhead. The overhead is a lot more safer, in my opinion. So when you
Okay.
see a stock that has like an ATM and they're utilizing the ATM, it's not just the ATM because sometimes the ATM will be there and they will not utilize it for a year or 2 years. Um, so those plays are a lot more safer. Okay, does that answer the question? Again, tell me
Yeah,
if
I
there's
think
any.
that does help me out a little more as far as the question goes. Now, I'm gonna explain what my understanding is
Mhm.
in anticipation for a offering, and if you could let me know if this is wrong, because I think this is what a lot of people are thinking.
Okay.
So I understand for a company to come out with the offering, they need three things.
Mm-hmm.
They need the S3 and or S1, so that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, they would need the 424B, and then number three, they need the effect. The second all three comes out, that's when, or once the third part of the equation of those three items comes out, that's when the offering comes out, and that's when the stock tanks extremely fast. Like I'm talking about seconds. So to my understanding, if you want to avoid a midday offering, you would want to avoid being long when two of the three components are there. So for example, this one had an S3 and an effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just missing the 424B, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm understanding that correctly. And then once that came out, that's when the price tanked. So I guess for future trades, I would not necessarily note to short because in anticipation of the offering because you don't know when it's going to come, but it would better for me to just avoid being long at the very least, knowing when not to be long in a stock. So if I see an S3 as well as an effect or an S3 and a 424B, I would know not to long because if the third equation, third part to that three-part filing
Mm-hmm.
comes out, that's when the stock tanks. Is that right?
No, that's wrong.
Or
That's
not
not.
necessarily right?
That's not right.
Okay.
So you broke it into three parts. You said there is an S3 effect and 424. So
Hmm.
S3, S1, yes. Um, and then the effect is a tricky one. So yes, they do need an effect, but what happens is in the case of TNXP, TENX, the effect and the offering came at the same time. And the 424 is just them disclosing that, hey, um, the offering happened. So 424 is just like if you're long, you get screwed at the offering, you get cut, and then sometimes it get posts the next day. So that statement for sure is not true. Uh, Offering is so complicated because you do. Are you familiar with what a pipe is?
Uh, Moderately. I watched the video a while back ago from Ricky Analog.
Ricky Analog is, yeah,
I'm
he's a
gonna have
familiar.
to, yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. I didn't really understand it
Okay, so let
to
me
the
just
full
answer your
potential.
question. You said
Yeah,
S3 effect and 424. 424, no. 424 is just like when the offering happens. Um, After they're like, this is what it is. This is what it is. A lot of times a PR or
gotcha.
something will come, and then let's break it down to S3, S1, and an effect. So effect, that's not true. Um, yes, it helps when the effect is there and things like that, makes it easier. But multiple times we have seen a an an effect come at the same time as offering. And I gave some examples a few minutes, seconds ago. It was like TNX, TNXP, um, and that's that. And then now the S1, S3, and I know I'm kind of like, so that's very concrete. Sometimes there's also something that happens pipe. Pipe is, so shelf is, think of shelf as like, this is some, so an S3 is a shelf. They would be like, look, there's $200 million here. They go to the SEC and they're like, SEC, SEC, check us out. We want to put this $200 million in case this happens in the future. This is our prospect. SEC says, okay, okay, all right, go, let's go do it. They have to meet a bunch of things and they have to get approved and it gets in effect. Uh, that's what a shelf is in uh, S1 is just a one-time thing. It's not necessarily a shelf. That's something I
Hmm.
learned recently. Shout out to JJ. Um, but then the pipe is something where a fund could be like, oh, you don't have a shelf, or your market cap is too small. Because there's also a baby shelf rule. Like I don't know how much you
Right.
know. You're familiar with that concept?
I am, yeah, when the
Okay,
MVPHS is less than 75 million.
75 million, and then they can only use whatever their public float is, one third of that in a 12
Yeah,
consecutive period. So if that's too
right.
small and their burn rate's too high, um, sometimes what happens and a person that pipe comes in involved. So they're not supposed to, but freaking SEC, but they take a preemptive short from my experience, and then when it gets short, and then the quote unquote the offering comes and they get a discounted price. So theoretically speaking, I don't know if you're looking at the in my thing, the chart SNCA is up. So they
Yeah.
would preemptively short, and then they would get an offering at a discounted price. That would be a pipe. But the problem with that is oftentimes a pipe needs to be, um, it gets automatically effective after 6 months. This is my understanding, by the way. I'm not, it's always a learning curve. So after 6 months, or it has to be registered. So so basically, they can't sell it at the market instantly, but it's at $4. They'll probably negotiate a price down at like, depending on how toxic the stock is, and there's so many variables combined. But to originally your point, you can also do a pipe without having an S3 or an S1.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that helps out a lot actually. I
I'm
think I was just misunderstanding when it is when it's time to avoid a stock being long. So
I'm very
I
happy to hear.
suppose
Please.
going back to your answer, the main indication would be the cash burn rate and comparing that to how much cash they have on hand. And
Yes.
then if you see, oh, they only have 1 month left, now you know that they're going to try to come up with an offering inside that 1 month, but you don't know when. You just know it'll be in a 1 month time frame.
Well, they could have 3 months. They could have sometimes more. This is why,
Right.
man, this thing is so beautiful and complex, and yet understandably annoying because we don't really know. So yeah, so it doesn't. I wouldn't put the 1 month as a rule of thumb. It could be 3 months.
Hmm.
It could be something longer, or sometimes there's. This is why SEC filings is beautiful too, uh, because an example is sometimes if they have cash, a portion of that cash has to remain with the company. That they has to be locked. If they have participated in something, some sort of a deal, they have to have the business locked, or they could have a lawsuit coming up, or they could have a big debt coming up, right? So you look
Okay.
at the
Right.
cash, and then you're like, whoa, there's a decent amount of cash. Why do they do an offering? But then you're like, oh shit, there's a lawsuit coming, and things like that. I don't mean to scare you away. I
No,
think
no, you're
so.
good.
So
Yeah.
are you a short seller or a long? Not that I care. I'm just curious because I know with all this you're like, do you what
Yeah,
do
I'm
you use?
primarily a short seller.
Oh, okay, I figured a lot of people that follow me are short sellers, but there's nothing wrong with longing at all. But
Yeah.
I could see from the other perspective, be like, what the hell, man? I'm trying to find out when to long, so yeah, I don't get caught. Why you're telling me to never long? I'm not saying that. I am. I don't. I'm not one of those guys that's like you can never long. Well, man, can make money both ways. You make money both ways as long as it works, fits your profile. Life is okay. All right. Anything else?
Yeah. So you mentioned before that I could send you my orders and then we could walk over that.
I prefer
I
the
was
execution because I think a lot of the times. How long have you been trading for?
I've been trading for more or less 3 years. It's always been on and off. So whenever people ask that, I've been trading for 3 years, but I tell people closer to like 1.5, maybe 2 years because it's been on and off for me.
Okay. Send me the executions, the entries and exits, and we can talk about it because oftentimes that's where the devil is hiding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna that's what I was gonna say is I was gonna send it to you right now, but for some reason I have trade zero. When I
Mm.
go onto my
Oh shit.
account over the weekends, for whatever reason, it never connects for me, so I can't find the executions.
No, you have to have it
At the
saved.
very least, could we go over your executions? Could you tell me why and when you went short? Because I was going short at the gap close level
What's
at,
that?
I would say, at like around 10:30ish, at the gap close level being 3.72. Because when you go to back to the yearly and you go back to the date of, let me see here, 7/25/2019, the
Oh,
very low
three
of that,
seventies.
or even the close,
Wait.
3.72,
Okay, 3.7.
that's where I was trying to short. And then when it started breaking out, that's when, or when I was seeing that 3.72 was holding,
Mm,
that's when I switched from short to long.
mm,
Um, Thankfully, I was long in a starting position, so I didn't
mm,
die in the offering,
mm,
but it did hurt
mm.
a little. Yeah,
Okay. One thing about me, bro, I really try not to create drama, and I'm sorry if I'm
yeah,
being rude, but I like sometimes I joke about it, but only with close friends. Gap to fill below, gap to fill above, all that jazz. Yeah, of course it works. Turn around, blah blah blah. But
yeah.
no reference points. Uh, Price action is king, no matter how much conviction you have. Um, by the way, I do know how you could get your executions, but it will take a while, maybe.
Hmm.
Because you can log into, so you could either go through your broker or you could log into Trade Zero, transfer into TraderView. If you think this would be beneficial for you, my objective is just to help out, man. I don't care. Like most people will probably not even watch this, but if I can make a difference in one person's life, I'm down with it. If
Yeah,
you want to, so I'm just giving you a solution. Um, you're trying to get it through the broker, right?
right.
Right.
Yeah, I was just
That
trying
won't
to
be
log
beneficial.
in how I normally log in
That won't
onto the
work
main platform.
because it won't show you entries on weekend. You can go to their website, Trade Zero,
Hmm.
and do you use TraderView?
Um, I used to. I don't have a membership right now, but yeah,
It's
I know what
free.
you're talking about.
I'm talking about the statistical tracker.
Right, yeah, the journal.
It's
Yep.
free. Yeah, it's free. You don't need a membership.
Oh, okay.
Um, that's number one. You have to do that. Anyway, so you could get your trades, put it there, and then we could talk about it. Um, if you want to. I think that may be beneficial, but I'll talk about my trades, sure. So the
Awesome.
first thing
Yeah,
is
thank you.
you shouldn't be going long. Like my blunt, honest thing is, because the gap filled above and went above, that's not a good enough, in my opinion. This is where some people, I'm sure, will like freaking people on Twitter will like rip my face. Like, what do you mean? It always works. That's not enough reason for you to go long. That it's gap filled below. So I, like a monkey, I started shorting. Actually, you have the chart in front of you?
I do have the chart in front of me,
Go
yeah.
on put on a 5 minute trade. So
Okay.
remember what I talked about?
Would you mind,
Yep.
hopefully this doesn't destroy the recording
Mm.
settings of yours, but if you could stream your screen for me and then I could watch where your screen as you go along.
Oh, now we're getting into some complicated things. Shit.
No worries. I could just watch the video after the fact.
But then we have to put you on a Discord channel and then stream and all that stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, no worries. I'll just watch it after the fact and I'll just try to follow along on my charting.
Let's see. Oh, I don't even have that option. Yeah, I don't have that option anymore. Sorry.
Yep, no worries.
But I'll
It's
go
fine.
into time frame. So
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
pull up the
yeah,
five
yeah.
minute? So the
Okay.
first thing, so here's my
Okay.
monkey behavior thing. So my executions. This is my execution so that people see there. This is what mine was. So I started shorting at around 12:35, and
Hmm.
that alone is a idiotic, semi-idiotic decision. And the reason being is, remember what I said? I said that they usually at the last few hours is when they dump because they don't want to have They don't want to have hold a big amount of the thing, right?
Right.
So there's so many different variables, but that's one of the variables. But I still took the short. Why did I take the short? So look at 12:25, 5 minute candle, and then I'm pretty sure I started shorting with those guys, and I was actually
Yeah.
pissed because Trade Zero wouldn't didn't give me the shares, and I was so agitated because I know myself, I always get a starter at like 305, 306, and I shorted 289. So 10:25 we have a high of a candle 295. At 12:25 it goes above 3 and it washes. And it washes
Yeah.
very strong with strong volume. A very, very strong volume. To me, I call that a liquidity event. And what my I don't want to be negative to myself. I'm very harsh to myself, by the way. That's the other thing. People will probably be surprised to hear that because they think this guy's a good trader. I am so mean to myself, man. Sometimes I feel bad. Um, so my newbie ass, stupid ass thought that, you know what, it's going to be a liquidity event and it's going to wash down, at least go down to VWAP, whatever the heck the VWAP was, which I can add here for the people that are curious. Let me put that to 0, put that to 0. So I thought it was going to wash at 12.25. My risk would have been 309. If I had my shares, I I personally, based on my trading style, and because I don't want to get a bit egotistic here, but like I'm a decent tape reader and volume flow and all that analysis, I know I would have shorted like 303, 304s, and then probably put in a healthy size sub 299 because you know that's a rejection, and then it washes all the way to 275. So here my risk would have been uh, like 5 cents, 10 cents, and then I'm already 30 cents in the money. And then my target would have been weave up. So that's if you can see my on Twitter. Do you have the here?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I'll send you my uh, Twitter link so you can see my executions on it. So this is why I started shorting there. And you know what? This is a good reflection for me too. And I guess ideally, I think, yeah, I think I was like normal size here because there was a point here I doubled up my share size. Yeah, yeah, I doubled up my share size. Okay, yeah. Um, so that's what my thought process was. Do you have it pulled up? The executions?
Yeah. I have the
I
screen
have
pulled
the
up from
screen pulled
Twitter.
up from
Yeah.
Twitter.
So um, that three-ish area was why I was shorting it. My risk was about. It was a soft stop at 309. Some people trade. Depends on your trading style. You can never follow somebody what they say. So some people like when it hits 309, 311, I'm gonna cut it. Other people are like, well, I'm gonna cut 2/3, and then some people are like, well, I'm gonna cut 4/5, whatever. So oftentimes for me, it depends on my size. If I'm normal size, normal risk, um, and it's like the setup, if it's like this, I'll like let it wiggle a little. I don't mind. But if I'm like what to me, I call uncomfortable size, at that point, I'll utilize a hard stop. I'll put like 3/4 in there because I have issues as well. My issues are that I have too much conviction when I have a lot of size. You can never freeze up, especially with these small
Yeah.
caps. So I was shorting that, and I think I got 290s, and you can see I had multiple entries there, and it went above that. But I was normal size, so I let it go, and I see a big stuff, and I'm like, oh, I got this. Okay, this is good. This feels good. Because the first time I shorted, it went quite a bit into the money, and I was just adding to a winner. That's the other thing I do. I try not to add to a loser. I try to always add to a winner. And an improvement for me for that first execution should have been actually no, that's bullshit. I'm lying to myself. In normal size, I always let it. I'm happy to stop out. I don't. If I take a profit in that position with the way my mindset is, if it had gone to 270 and I took a profit, to me, how my trading style is, I would have been pissed at myself. And don't do that for you if you're not that. Some people are scalpers and like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like we all have to adjust to how we trade. So um, I kind of played that well, not well. I think I played it, the first one not bad. So that was my risk. I cut like 9/10 or 18/20th, a large portion of it or all of it, whatever that above risk. And when it went above that, it went to 320 and like it went above 309 to 320 and then it washed. I thought I was good. At this point here, I could make an argument that above 306, I should have cut it, but I don't care. I cut it at 320. That's the first execution. And then what happened is it started looking heavy. And I think either at this trade or next trade, I doubled up my share size because I was like, man, something fishy is going on here. That's when I realized, because there was a lot of volume being traded, and this goes into like, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but some stuff like that. So second or third entry, I had doubled up, or the last one, I don't recall. So the second entry I shorted because I saw a heavier tape, and then it washed into it, and I said, okay, from this point, you see the second triangle? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, the second
Yeah.
rectangular, whatever, the execution.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
second
Yeah. Yeah.
rectangle. And here, I was like, okay, I think this may have been where I got a lot of more shares because I was like, you know what, this is not supposed to reclaim. When you have a wash and you're in the money, I was telling myself, I was like, this should cut above 320. I felt very uncomfortable. Like hindsight's 2020. I could say this and that, but maybe my emotions were involved. It washes three and it keeps perking up. Not a good sign. I shouldn't necessarily
Hmm.
be fighting it. This is why I said if I play this trade, bro, over 10,000 times, I think more likely I will lose money. I made a very good. This is a very good return RR, but it's not sustainable. So getting money is not always means it's a good thing. So I shorted, but thankfully, my perspective and experience on this trade anyway is I was like this much of a wash and it went below three again. I was like if it goes below 309 or something, or what was it? It must have been, yeah, 309, 310. Um, I will cut it. So I cut that in profit, small profit, whatever. And then I slowly started shorting again. This is the third entry. This was just me being monkey and stupid. And I was like, well, let's just get a starter. This one here, I think, was not full size, was a starter. But this was bad because you always want to risk something to the left.
Yeah.
So one
Yeah. I follow.
mistake, one thing that
Yeah. I follow.
again, like I said, I make mistakes too. We always should have something to risk against to the left. Nate, Investors Underground, or actually the girl that's there that swings, I forgot her name. She always says, look to the left to predict right. Um, it's a and it's one of my philosophies. I rather be a chicken. I don't give a shit. I'll be a chicken. I want to have something to the left to risk against. Some people can say parabolic chart. I don't want to have discussions. So this third trade was really bad, really stupid. I had nothing to risk against. If my risk should have been 336, I think, but I was shorting like 340s. I was shorting 340s, 335, but it was a smaller size. And then eventually I'm like, okay, that's it. And I think I cut it at 360s. And then after that, I'm pretty sure, I'm very, very positive at uh, near near 135, 145, I had gotten a lot more shares because that's just from a bit of experience that comes into play. Um, and you could see I was like very, very tight about that risk. Like I was using hard stops like crazy because I knew this thing could skip. But there was also this possibility. So now remember the realm that I said at around 2 to 4 they need to dump. So why do
Hmm.
they need to dump? Why do they need so much time? because you like from a market maker's perspective, it's not just like they can dump like 1,000 or 20,000 shares. It's not like that. They would have crap load of shares and they need a lot of time to sell and unwind it, oftentimes. So this is why they usually take their time with it. So now we're getting close to 2 o'clock, right? And long and
Right.
behold, right, guess when it happens? Right at freaking 2. And I'll give you another golden nugget here. This is, it may come across as hindsight, but it's not, because I was on my voice with some friends. Um, I was actually trying to short 405s, and I don't know. I don't think I got failed or something. I don't know what my short entry was. I think it might have been somewhere 399 or 4. It wasn't 405. It seems like, but I know I was trying to. And you look at the 5 minute volume there at 1350. You see that? 1.4 million.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I see that.
The one before you see a million. It broke a high and it's doing it on a lower volume. So
Mm.
these
Okay.
dickhead manipulators, and I made a post recently. I try not to be so negative and all that crap, but I genuinely feel bad for the people that are traders, because these guys are so fucking crooks, man. Like, so it squeezes higher, and they realize, okay, there's no more shorts to squeeze. Because if it breaks the high of the day, right, people get exhausted, and they're like, okay, stop. So they knew shorts were in here trying to short it. So it goes above, as you can see, 1345, low volume. It comes south. Um, and then it goes higher again. The volume is still lower in comparison to 1350s. You see that? Those
Yeah.
volume bars are like 1.8, all that jazz. So I was on voice with like 5, 6 friends, and majority of those guys all got like 405s, 4s, 399s, full size. They hit it, and alhamdulillah, everybody made really good money. A lot of the guys covered at 190, 160. It's very, very good. I tried shorting it more. I actually borrowed. I was very uncomfortable size, like I was a good size long, good size short. Um, and I borrowed more shares. Uh, and whenever stuff like this happens, another tip that I have for myself is I always think of the worst case scenario. I was thinking, hey, is this a potential trap? Because it washed down with only 1.1 million. But then when the PR and stuff like that came, and I was like, okay. Then I borrowed a lot more shares, and I actually hit. I thought I hit the bid, even a few cents below the bid, but it didn't fill me. It just washed. So even without that, I made like 32 RR after my losses. But it would have been a lot more had I filled that short. But whatever. I'm very grateful, happy. And then the other stuff's smaller, just tape read. Started shorting 175, 177, 78, 74, and then as it washed, I covered into like 54 or 154, 51. I think the lowest I had was like 51. I think I covered most of my sides at 51. Yeah, because I was there, and that helps.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
helps a
no, that
ton.
helps
Yeah,
a
because I
ton.
was
Yeah,
trying to
because I
figure
was
out
trying to figure out
why people
why
would be
people would
shorting,
be
because it also
shorting,
even
because
looks
it
like you
also
were
even
adding
looks like you were
to a
adding
loser as it
to
was
a
going
loser
up,
as it
but
was
it was
going up, but it
because
was because
knowing that
knowing that
the two
the two
o'clock,
o'clock,
I guess,
I guess,
soft roll
soft
for
roll
market
for
makers
market
trying
makers
to
trying to
have time
have
to
time to
unwind their
unwind their
position,
position,
along with
along with
the lower
the lower
volume
volume
of the high of
of the
day
high of
pushes.
day
Because
pushes. Because
I guess
I guess
that's what
that's
helped
what
me
helped
out
me out
the most
the
right now,
most right
trying to
now, trying to
understand why you were
understand why you were
shorting
shorting
when
when
again
again
there was
there was
nothing to
nothing
the
to the
left to
left
be
to be
risking
risking
off of.
off of.
So
So
I'm happy to hear that.
I
I
guess my
guess my
second
second
question,
question,
or I
or
think
I
this
think
might
this
even
might
be my
even be my
last
last
question,
question,
because
because
I
I
have a
have
really
a
good
really good
understanding
understanding
of what
of
you're
what you're
thinking now.
thinking now.
I'm very happy to hear that.
So my
So my
last
last
question
question
is,
is,
had
had
it
it
kept
kept
pushing
pushing
past
past
405,
405,
where
even
you
where
were
you were
trying to get
trying to get
filled,
filled,
where were
where
you
were you
placing
placing
your
your
stop
stop
at for
at
that
for that
last
last
position that
position
you had
that you
over
had
there?
over there?
So you made a comment that I was adding to a loser. I try not to. I really, really try not to. But we're all human beings. So once I have a confirmation, So that third trade that you see, that long ass trade, the one with the
Mm-hmm.
big thing, that's a trade that I messed up on. But that's a trade that I'm pretty sure I did not have my full size. So I always slow entered. But at the top, I had like for me, like I was uncomfortable size share, so I wasn't using hotkeys. I was just like um, using. I had like an order set up. I was like with my share size, and I was just hitting it at once up there.
Mm.
But usually I scale in. So I try not to add to a loser. But what made you think that there was other than the third one? Was there something else?
Um, I'm sorry.
I'm
What was
sorry,
that
what was that
question?
question?
You said that it looked like I was adding to a loser. Was that
Yeah.
Yeah,
the third
Well,
triangle, or something? Was there something else? Because I can clarify.
I
I
guess my
guess my
question
question
was for
was
the
for the
last
last
position just
position just
before
before
um
um
big drop.
big drop.
You said that
You
you were
said that you
adding
were adding
because the
because the
pushes had
pushes
less
had less
volume to it,
volume to
right?
it, right?
I was shorting. So
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
were
you were
adding to
adding to
your
your
short.
short.
no, 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 no. Like I cut my short. So this is
Oh,
the
Oh,
thing.
okay.
okay.
All of these. See, okay, maybe that's why it's good to clarify. These boxes, what I drew, that's what my trade was. Like when that box I finished, that's like one trade. It's done.
Okay,
Okay,
gotcha.
gotcha.
So at that point, like you should always have a risk to risk against. Like those wicks, that's what I was risking. So when I got to that wick, it stopped me out. Does that make sense? So that's like
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
that
yeah,
makes
that
whatever
a lot
makes
more
shares
a
I
lot more
had,
sense.
sense.
I cut out. It wasn't like at bro. That's how you blow up. My personal opinion, my trading style, I don't add to a loser, and it has served me so fucking well. Excuse my language. It served me so well. And if you're trying to get consistent, you're trying to talk to big losses, the best way to blow up is add to a loser. So no,
Okay.
I was cutting it. Oftentimes it would be cut completely, or my personality, the way I am, is I just keep a very tiny piece. But that's not like it's like 1/50th. Basically, you can say that I completely hard stop everything. Like 1/50th size I keep just because that's the way my brain works. Like if I have a little piece in it, but I cut almost everything. It's better to cut completely off. So those boxes I was completely off cutting. And the third trade is something for sure that's I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed in that because if you could see, I was shorting on it. I was shorting at like 135 versus the previous high, and I don't think I was full size, and then I was just like, what am I? This is the one that I kind of messed up on. I could have done a better job at. And then the fourth one, as you can see, what I shorted, um, I'm pretty sure I cut that break even as well. The third one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was another one. Apparently, I didn't triangle where I was shorting the wicks, and then I was just like, I'll give it um, just 398 or 4 or something like that. Just stop. I don't mind taking paper cut loss because I knew if it washed where my target was potentially, it would have made a really good reward. So the last one that I hit with the full size, which was around 405 or 4, whatever the heck it was, my risk
Yep.
was above the wick.
Okay.
And like I said, some people they cut it hard, some people they just let it wiggle a little bit if it's like that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
All right, cool.
All
Yeah,
right,
no, I
cool. Yeah,
understand
no, I
everything.
understand everything.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That was
That
helpful
was
so
helpful
much. Thank
so
you so
much. Thank
much.
you so much.
That makes me so happy that if things help click, it brightens my day. So thank you for coming out, being on voice, and I hope if somebody else is hearing this, they benefited from it as well. And yeah, all right, brother. So I'm assuming you don't have any other questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No,
that's
that's
everything. Thank
everything.
you.
Thank you.
No worries. Anytime. Have a wonderful day, bro. And if you need anything, if you had some sort of questions about your entries, exits, even after this, like shoot me a message and I can like quickly respond. and be like, well, that is what I would improve. And yeah,
Awesome. All
Awesome.
right.
All right.
Thanks so
Thanks
much.
so much. I
I
appreciate it,
appreciate
and
it, and best of luck
best of
to
luck
you
to
yeah,
and
you
your
and
trading.
your trading.
and thank you very much, and thank you for being patient, coming on voice. And I'm not gonna lie, at the start I was frustrated, but genuinely, everything happens for a reason. For the longest time that I've been recording, I've always had an issue that I had to close my software recording app and I had to use my phone and Discord. Now, because we struggled, now I was able to fix it and get it going. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It
It
sounds like
sounds like
the
the
audio
audio
is gonna
is
sound
gonna
really good
sound
for
really good
this
for
next
this
video.
next video.
I hope so, and I hope if anybody is hearing this, you guys feel free to comment below. Subscribe if this was something beneficial. If you made it this far, share with somebody that you think it would help, and hopefully I'll see you guys later. Take care, guys. Bye.